Well, my dears, some of the reviews are already in for Omid Scobie's Endgame, and even some of the players on the liberal, left-leaning side of American society that you might think would naturally align more with the Harkledom are rather scathing in this stuff and nonsense, this nonsense on manuscript. New York Times compares it to an AI bot, which is what some people have always suspected about Mr. Scobie. An AI bot says that it does the Sussexes no favours, actually. So for those of you that might be getting your knickers in a twist, and I realise that I look rather exercised on my broadcasts because I come to you in a passionate fervour, my dears, you have to understand. But let us all be calmed by the fact that he is doing the royal family's work. He is doing the royal family's work for them, just as the Harkles have done all these few years, because all it does is throw the good work that the royal family do firmly into the limelight, don't you think, my dear? Whenever it's put under scrutiny like this, there's a few bumps in the road along the way, but they always come up smelling like roses. So who cares, ultimately? They said it reads like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT. Not all that different from what Harry presented in Spare. Exactly what I've been saying, that it sounds just like a rehash, a spare part of Spare. Not at all that different from Spare, devoted to setting the record straight on petty slights against the Sussexes. And of course it's dream coverage for Omid Scobie, and props to him. He's all over the news today here in the kingdom, popping up everywhere. So for those of you that say he won't achieve his objective, I feel his only objective is to make money, and I think that he will make a good deal of money from this enterprise. It's not to salvage the reputation of the Sussexes. Do you really think that he cares? Do you really think that he gives two figs? He's neither here nor there. This is business. This is business. So we should try not to take it personally, shouldn't we, my dear? This is his hustle. There you go. Readers hoping for a final death blow of gossip will be disappointed. We've heard much of it before. From Fergie, from Diana, from Charles, from Harry, from Harry, from Harry again. That's what the New York Times says. It says he paints Meghan and Harry in a relentlessly saintly light. Well, that's never going to wash, is it, my dear? What are they? The patron saints of bullshit? Of bullshit? I ask you. We're not going to buy that. It's hard not to find Scobie's dire predictions a tad hyperbolic. Yes, because, he predicts that the royal family are facing extinction, and this, that, and the 10th. Well, he's got to throw down the drama, hasn't he? He's got to throw down the conflict into his tome of fiction. And apparently Charles and Camilla come out of it rather well if you compare to William, how William comes out of it. He is going for the jugular with William. He needs a baddie for this fiction, this concoction. And it's going to be William, because that will play very well to certain quarters out there who might be fans of the Sussexes, that niche market, who are hell-bent on painting Prince William as a cruel, wicked monster. We know that he is anything but that. And I will hold judgment until I have read the book for myself. Yes, I will be purchasing a copy of it. Tomorrow it is released, isn't it? So there will be further broadcasts, I'm afraid, my dear, on that issue this week, but that's the hot topic, and I will be having my say on what Mr. Scobie's got to say. I will also, quite possibly, be returning that book. But there is a determined overreach, isn't there, to cast aspersions at William and paint him out to be hot-headed, arrogant, uppity, wicked. And speaking about uppity, by the way, because I used it in the previous broadcast, this crops up occasionally. I've probably only used the word uppity 3 or 4 times in the last 2.5 years doing this channel, but every time I utter it, there will be a few comments from the language police. Now, I mean this kindly, Rebecca Corbin, who commented. Please don't come for her, because she was very polite in her comment, but I did want to reply to it. River, please be a bit judicious about the use of the word uppity. Here we go. In America, it has racial undertones going back to the days of slavery. We know. I know you have no such intent with the use of the word in connection to Meghan. Well, therein lies the rub, my dear. You know that I have no intent. That is where it should stop. That is where it should stop. I just wanted to give you an FYI. Yes, I'm not living under a rock, my dear. I know that, and I'm just being a little bit fruity. I respond in peace. Thank you for your comment, seriously, but it gives me an opportunity to address it for the benefit of other people. Firstly, as you say, in America it has racial undertones. This is the United Kingdom. I realise I have a broad audience from all over the place, and I love that very much. And I love Americans, but I'm English. I'm English. I live in England, and I speak with the English style, the English vernacular, and I don't think that every country in the world that isn't America should be judged or policed and encouraged into the mores and the ways of America. Its influence is so vast everywhere that everywhere is becoming America on stilts. And the youth in England, for example, when all of the Black Matter, so sick of all of that, Black Lives Matter came into popularity and everything, they're mistaking the history between blacks and whites in America with our history and our Commonwealth history. And we've certainly got many troubles of our own in the past with regards to race relations, but they are entirely different and entirely separate from the race relations in America. We were under a British Empire where there were fruits of empire all over the globe. That's why many of them have been welcomed here in the decades afterwards. And of course there were certain frictions decades ago. They were all ironed out. We never had segregation in the same way. We never had Jim Crow. Did we have violence and racism? Yes. Did we also have undesirable behaviour from immigrants? Yes. So we actually dealt those issues over the last few decades, but in the last few years, the two different attitudes, the two different worlds have been sort of intermingled and interwoven. So some of us get a little bit vexed about it, as you can see, my dear. This is the kingdom, not the states. So if there are racial connotations over there, I'm afraid it's not really that much of concern to me. The word uppity to me came into my consciousness as it did a vast swathe of the English consciousness via the book Mr. Uppity, which is a Mr. and Miss book series that has been popular for generations. These books have been in my family for generations, and that's where I first heard it, the character Mr. Uppity, based on a white man. I mean, he was coloured a kind of burgundy shade of purple, purplish brown, but he was in fact based on a stereotypical English aristocratic kind of figure. Mr. Uppity, sort of snotty-nosed, a bit of a snob, arrogant, and that is how I see it and continue to see it. Absolutely no connection to race. No, not in modern parlance in the United Kingdom. I'd never ever heard that connection, I'm afraid, my dear. And as for using that word to describe Meghan Markle, well, I've used 1,000 adjectives to describe her over the years, haven't I, my dear? Including a few complimentary ones. I was just saying last week that I thought she and Harry looked quite lovely in a rare moment. So lovely is one adjective I use. And uppity happened to be another one. But, she is one of the most privileged women on earth at this very moment. She remains a princess of the United Kingdom, whether or not we like it, behind the scenes and in the paperwork. She is an HRH and a princess. Her children are prince and princess. She grew up under the auspices of perceived white privilege and the white privilege of some members of her family, and then proceeded to exist under the auspices of mixed race privileges, and now pinning herself to the bandwagon of the likes of BLM and using the race card, she is a token of black privilege. Privilege, trying to paint herself as something else. And so I'm afraid if the hat fits, then she must wear that hat, and hopefully it won't be that one that was designed to look like a great big turd emoji. Before we go on to talk about Endgame, Ginger Spice, I saw, shared a photograph of her famous chums at the final Grand Prix race of the season. She is married to Christian Horner, who is team principal of the Formula One team, and she was joined by Naomi Campbell, Orly Bloom, and the Brooksbanks. Yes, our dear Princess Eugenie and Jackie Brooksbank made an appearance. It's vulgar. It's vulgar. It's somewhat narcissistic. But what isn't in 2023? That's what seems to go. They're certainly not the only ones doing it. I would have hoped that a grandchild of the late Queen could resist such things, but they're all at it, including the Tyndalls, and to some extent even some of the other more senior members of the royal family on occasion. So I can't sit in this chair complaining about, well, I suppose I can sit here complaining about it forever, but well, it gets it out the system. Do you understand, my fruits? It helps get it all out the system to have a good moan and a good bitch about it. But I don't begrudge the gal some fun. I like Eugenie most of the time. I hear that she's loving life in Portugal. She loves trotting down to the local supermarket. She doesn't get any hassle. The paps don't care who she is. So why can't Harry and Meghan move there with her and lived in peace instead of LA? But then again, the entire objective of the privacy tour was to gain attention. Funny that, isn't it? Princess Eugenie was also pictured in Chanel at the Abu Dhabi Art 2023 at Canvas Gallery. A little affair with up-and-coming artists. I wouldn't say it was Chanel's finest moment, but it looks rather cosy, I suppose. A little ill-fitting around the shoulders, but fine. And Princess Catherine, or Keen Kate, as Omid Scobie tells us. I rather enjoyed that. Omid Scobie tells us that she was known as Keen Kate for a while in inner circles in the press, because she is always keen to learn. The insinuation being that she hasn't learnt anything and that she's not really on the ball. But she's keen to learn. Keen Kate. We'll have more on that in coming broadcasts. But Princess Catherine visited Sebi's Corner in Barnet to kickstart an initiative from the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood to provide support to families with young children in the run-up to Christmas. And there was lots of talk and chatter about baby banks and an alliance of baby banks. Fascinating stuff. And this is the kind of thing that she does so well, so effortlessly. And it is rather underestimated, the power of these sorts of get-togethers and collaborations, rather underestimated by the likes of Omid Scobie, as we will discuss. As I have said, I am prepared to suspend judgment until I have read the tome. It is only fair. Yes, my initial impression from what we've read so far and reading other reviews is that it's nothing other than a puff piece in favour of the Harkles. And I very much doubt that I will be persuaded otherwise, but I believe in holding fire until the appropriate moment. However, it sounds as if King Charles was right, because he's been rumoured to be calling Harry that fool behind the scenes. Ha ha! We've got another nickname for Tinsy Todger, haven't we, my dears? We've got another name, that fool. Doesn't have the same ring to it as my beloved daughter-in-law, does it? That fool is what Harry gets issued with. If we are to believe these rumours, but we are being told in the press that friends of the Prince of Wales have denied all of these outrageous suggestions that Prince William briefed against Harry in the strongest terms, and one of these sources, these friends, and I do arch an eyebrow at that description, just as I do when it comes to Harkle's friends. One of these friends told the Mail that Mr. Scobie's depiction of William was the very opposite of William's personal mantra, and they said he has always been very tight-lipped when it comes to his family and made it clear to anyone within his orbit that he would not do deals with the media. Of course he wouldn't. Like Harry, he is scarred by his childhood experiences, seeing his mother and father engaged in what was dubbed the War of the Waleses. He never wanted history to repeat itself. That was something that he and Harry were meant to be united on. Yes, isn't it very sad? And another friend told the Mail It's one thing writing a critique of the royal family. That's freedom of expression. But it's another thing to peddle conspiracy theories dressed up as fact. The suggestion that royal aides were briefing negative stories about Harry and Meghan is totally fabricated. It just didn't happen. The truth is that everyone was walking on eggshells practically from the engagement, trying to keep them happy. And the truth is that there is going to be so little substance, in fact none, in this tome, as far as I can anticipate. Because for one thing, Mr. Scobie is probably aware that any whispers he's been receiving might not be so watertight and might leave him open to litigation and being sued. Of course, he is protected by the fact that the royal family aren't inclined to sue. They avoided any costs. They don't want that kind of thing, and it's extremely unlikely. But if he was to push and upset the apple cart too much, he knows that he might find himself with unwanted scrutiny and unwanted court appearances coming up in the future. So he has to hedge his bets, try and provide some excitement, some drama by insinuation, without actually revealing anything concrete or giving away any actual sources or providing any substance. It is a house of cards. Mr. Scobie was interviewed in the Times, the UK Times, and he has insisted that he is not Meghan's friend and he's not on their payroll. He says, "I have mutual friends with Meghan, and that definitely helps with getting information and breaking details." And he refers quite a few times, I think, to their rep. So he seems to have a contact very close to the world of the succubuses. Succubi. Mutual friends indeed. Catherine is being portrayed as an underachieving, nervous wreck. And that she just grins away for photo opportunities like a model. Well, that's all right with me, my dear. I don't care. She could be the Marilyn of the modern era for all I care. But anyway, he says, in the coverage of Kate, we infantilise her massively. What hideous writing. We infantilise her massively, so the bar is always lower. The small achievements that we've seen from the Princess of Wales wouldn't be noticed if it was from another member of the royal family. But with Kate, it's like, wow. Well, he knows that he has to throw in a lot of little subtle, shady digs and not so subtle digs at Catherine because it will appease his audience. Fine. And I don't think the points he makes there are entirely without merit, if coming from a certain angle. But if you put them in context, the tabloid press infantilise any figure in the public eye in the same way. It's not exclusive to Catherine as Princess of Wales. Think about it. Think about the deifying, the worshipping of celebrities and people in the public eye. I see it a lot. Whether it's Elizabeth Taylor, Captain Tom Moore, Princess Diana, and yes, Meghan Markle. We see just as much of her with her fandom, with the Harkledom, I'm sure, whenever something's posted. Like her shit smells of violets. You see it all the time, my dear, all over the place. It is not exclusive to Catherine, but I get the point. But as for small achievements, as he calls the Princess of Wales's work so far in her life, Mr. Scobie, it's rather sad, but Mr. Scobie and the like are missing the point entirely. And it's possibly actually why his kind sympathise with the Meghan Markles of this world and the Prince Harrys. You'll often hear me tell you that small pleasures, in my opinion, are the greatest pleasures. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't turn down a casket of diamonds, and we all love a big fat cock. But small pleasures like milk and honey with a little grated nutmeg over the top are sometimes the greatest pleasures, and the more longer lasting, the more eternal. And small achievements can also be viewed in a similar way, I feel, because royalty is not about fervently presenting one's grand passion to the world. adventurism. It's about ferment, not fervent. Fermenting, alchemy, weaving a lifelong tapestry, as Catherine is doing, legacy. And it's also about not having pretensions to be something that one is not, that we see with Meghan and Harry. It's about accepting where your skills lie. It's about accepting your strengths and your weaknesses. And Catherine is not some ambitious arriviste that is going to mistake her role as the Princess of Wales as a boardroom executive who's going to trundle in and demand that everybody knows exactly what's key now that she's in charge as an executive with graphic PowerPoint illustrations. Catherine has taken a look at what her own abilities and what her own character can help deliver to benefit the nation and enhance the nation. And she has been the backbone, the absolute backbone, a pillar of strength and succour to our future king and, well, to two future kings. And William, like Harry, was greatly damaged by the death of his mother. Still in mourning, said that he will be eternally in shock at the moment that he found out that his mum died. Yes, eternally in shock. She has provided stability for a king in the making that could have gone off the rails and off the wagon. Off the wheels, oh dear. Losing the plot, my dear, he is a Wales. Off the wheels and off the wagon. Wah, wah, wah. She provides stability and love as a mother and a wife. Let's not forget that as well. She doesn't try and tear families apart. She doesn't try to isolate him from other members of the family. Well, maybe from Meghan Markle, but who can blame her? She provides a focus point as well for national optimism. Look at the gay scenes wherever she is, the smiles on people's faces, the people in raves about her. So I don't underestimate the power of her beauty, even if it is just as a model flashing a smile, a silent movie star, if you will. I do not. I mean, this is me you're talking to, my dear. I understand the value of what that actually achieves and its tangible effects, and its timelessness. So I'm certainly not going to complain about the fact that she is a rave, a complete rave, and that the camera loves her, and will always do, even as she moves into the autumn and winter seasons. Different kinds of beauty for different seasons, but she has it, and I'm grateful for it. And let's not pretend that the Duchess of Sussex doesn't try to play up to that arena as well. Unfortunately, she's always going to be compared to the Princess of Wales, so she's always going to fall flat on her face with that one. But you can try, my dear, try and try again and fail again. But the way that Catherine meets and mixes with the general population is fairy dusting. I call it fairy dusting. And the late Elizabeth used to have it, as many members of the royal family do, but it's just that magic alchemical touch. Wonderful. Highly underestimated. You see it on a lesser scale with any celebrity. And some of the A-listers, the Hollywooders, it's the spell of fame, isn't it, my dear? But Catherine is an essential asset to the royal family. She is solid, she is staunch, and underestimate her at your peril. At your peril. Because maybe her detractors are too dumb to sense that she has outfoxed the enemy. You might not be able to sense exactly where her intelligence is, because intelligence comes in different formats. That's why I hesitated the other day when we were comparing Meghan's intelligence to Catherine's intelligence. It's not because I don't think that Catherine has intelligence. She doesn't have the same kind of intelligence as Meghan Markle. Thankfully. Hers is more subtle and more fruitful. It's a different kind of intelligence. And it's so subtle that it can only be seen by those who are bright enough to recognise it. And I'm afraid if you don't have that kind of power, like a Harry, or perhaps a Mr. Scobie, I don't know if he's intelligent or not, I can only go off what he's writing here and his observations here, then it's like a human that can't hear the high notes of a dog whistle, you know? So who is the real genius here when we see sweet, innocent, harmless Catherine outfoxing the enemy at every turn, effortlessly? Mr. Scobie admits to Botox many years ago. He admits his age, 42 years old, and he admits knocking 6 years off of his age. In a 2020 interview, he tells the Times, "That was unfortunate and naive of me. You live and learn." But do you, Mr. Scobie? Do you? As well as the Botox many years ago, he tells us that he also indulges in ultherapy. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I've never heard of ultherapy, a non-surgical skin tightening procedure. That's what's to blame, apparently, my dear. He tells us that he's hopelessly single. Oh, form an orderly queue, ladies and gentlemen. Form an orderly queue. Hopelessly single, but he has a bulldog, Yoshi, for company. Woof woof. Lucky old Yoshi. Harry's focus, as told to Mr. Scobie by the team, meaning the team in charge of Archibald, presumably. Harry's focus is really building his work in the military space. This is what he's saying, within the United States. That is his focus going forward, and I know that will appall many of you in the comment section. Yeah, that's where he wants to ingratiate himself, within the military space. And we're told, and this is rather delicious, that Queen Camilla reportedly rolls her eyes whenever gender identity and veganism are mentioned. We knew she was one of us, didn't we, my dears, honestly? And they say Diana had the common touch. Well, who doesn't roll their eyes at it all, my dear, apart from a few strange, peculiar sticklers? Not so much the veganism, but, gender identity, all that kind of thing. Well, there's nothing offensive in that to anyone who's got their head screwed on. And he claims that when Piers Morgan was calling Meghan Pinocchio Princess, Camilla quietly thanked him for defending the firm. Well, I am certainly not a fan of Piers Morgan, but that doesn't mean that I don't very much appreciate his commentary in the wake of the Oprah Winfrey interview, because who else was daring to put up some sort of counter-argument, counter-offensive for their claims? He was very vocal, so I must say that I do appreciate him for that. The Princess Royal attended St John Ambulance's annual Young Achievers reception, and she met the spellbound young. Look how spellbound they are, my dear, enchanted by the princess. And these young people had saved lives, shown exceptional bravery, and overcome difficult personal circumstances. And Her Royal Highness has been Commandant-in-Chief since 1970. And I suppose in Mr. Scobie's view, Aunt Anne is an underachiever too? Absolutely not. She goes about her duties quietly, gracefully, with dignity, not forcefully inserting herself into various sticky situations, not being all bolshy and ambitious arriviste. Let she be a nice role model for Catherine, if anybody. Not the likes of Meghan Markle, I'm afraid, who's going to change the world in one sweep. She's going to sweep everything off the desk, clutch her cartridge pen that's been monogrammed, dripped in honey. Meghan Markle! No, that is not the royal way, and it is not the way that Catherine will proceed with her humble signature. Nothing gaudy, nothing showy. The king attended church, a service of lessons held in St Mary Magdalene, Sandringham. It was attended by His Majesty, and look at those huge pockets. I do love that coat with its massive, massive pockets. Room for the Queen to slip her hand inside and have a fiddle. Eh, my dears? Cosy. Well, thank you for getting cosy with me, my dears. I'm afraid we will have more of these aspersions to deal with in the coming days, and I will be discussing them with you. So, see you next time, my dears. Take care and toodle pip. Thank you for joining me.